Line, so it means that we're streaming. Hello and welcome. It's Sunday night, it's 8 o'clock, and you're watching Let's Kill Twitter with me, Julian Hall. This is the show that aims to detox your timeline with the art of conversation. Thankfully, I don't have to do that lofty task alone, and joining me tonight to trawl through Twitter is comedian Maddie Campion. But before I introduce Maddie, just a bit of the usual housekeeping. If you're watching now live, then you'll be watching us on either YouTube, Facebook Live or Twitch. Obviously, the stream is available to watch after the show on YouTube and on Facebook Live. Please do watch it on YouTube because I think the quality's better, and also I'd really like it if people subscribe to the page. It'd be fantastic. In terms of subscribing to anything else, the crucial thing, I mean, we're across all social media, but the crucial thing is the Twitter account, of course, which is at LKTZoom, which is splashed around the screen. It's on my little sign off there. You can see the Twitter feed right next to me. And we've also got a lovely ticker that is whirling across the screen with our Twitter handle and Maddie's and various other info. So I think that's enough housekeeping for now. I will now introduce our fantastic guest, Maddie Campion, who's a stand-up comedian, writer and performer. Her credits include appearances on Comedy Central, ABC Canada, BBC Radio 4 Extra and BBC Radio for the Leicester Comedy Festival. Maddie was a regional finalist in the Funny Women Awards in 2018, a semi-finalist for the Leicester Square New Comedian of the Year Award in 2019 and a finalist at North Downs 2020 competition. Fantastic batting average there. Among her full-length live shows was a 2018 multimedia sketch show, 20 Uses for a Love Doll. Not quite what you're expecting. We will be asking about that in a moment. That was developed by Soho Theatre and SYC Edinburgh Lab, and it got 5 stars in Funny Women, who described Maddie as a very inventive and dry writer. Maddie hopes to be hosting a comedy night again when the pandemic finally ends, which is actually something I hope that I'll be doing as well. So let's hope that kind of moves along for both of us. You can catch Maddie's podcast, The Jacqueline Wilson Fan Club, where guests revisit celebrated children's and young adult books and have a good old nostalgic chat. So without too much further ado, and by the power invested in Zoom and OBS, please welcome Maddie Campion. Hello! You're on screen. You're live.
Hello. How's it going?
Yeah, pretty good, really. I mean, the world seems like a strange place in terms of football. I should have actually mentioned that. Well, I'll mention that at the end of the show because we won't be having a show next week, funnily enough, because it's the finals. But I don't want to sort of prejudice who will be in them. So it's kind of, yes, I'm excited because of that, because I've had a whole month of football intravenously injected in me. And I keep seeing smatterings of summer. So I'm very well. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I am starting. I don't know about everyone else, but I'm going out. I'm socialising. I'm gigging again.
What's that like?
I'm like, well, it's really exhausting. It's really like I'm going out. I don't know how I have the energy to do it. Like I can't believe I left the house in the morning, would work in an office. And then go to a gig and then come home and do that sort of at least, well, I'd go to work every day of the week and I'd gig every day of the week if I could. But yeah, how did I ever have that kind of energy? I don't know. Like,
I don't know. It's going to take a bit of getting back into the swing, I would imagine.
Yeah, I might just sort of work, well, I might just spend a lot more time focusing on staying indoors even after there's no risk of pandemic, because I'm too tired to do too much now. You know what, it's not as fun as I remember it outside, not quite as exciting.
I wondered how soon it would be that people would actually think, well, out normal, it's overrated.
Yeah.
Well, you had a gig on Thursday there, so it's actually not that long ago since you've had a gig. It was at Leicester Square Theatre, I think, wasn't it?
It was, no, this was at the Museum of Comedy, which is linked, part of the, so it's the most intellectual comedy venue there is.
It's in a crypt. Well,
yeah, it's in a crypt, and surrounded by artifacts. What more can you want? It was interesting because it's cabaret seating, and I would say that cabaret seating doesn't lend itself well to comedy because I think more packed an audience is together, the more likely will they behave. It's that packed mentality that you know people have less distractions, they're more involved, they're more engaging. But that would go against all the scientific advice right now. And I think if any audience member were packed with a bunch of strangers, they would it be right to sort of say, I don't want to sit like this. So it was interesting performing in and
everyone's still in masks, aren't they?
I think it's sort of, I don't know, no one knows what the rules are, do they? Let's be honest. Like they could, I see people, like I saw like 60 kids last Saturday walking down the street in a group, and I was like, is this legal? Is this not? I don't know.
But what about what about actually in the Museum of Comedy though, in the audience? Are they not all masked up?
No, they weren't all masked up at this one, but I think it's like in a pub that you don't have, in a restaurant, you don't have to sit and wear a mask when you're sat down. I just hope that anyone who has symptoms would have not come to my show. So fingers crossed.
That clearly on the tickets.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really grateful for everyone who came to watch me. But if it turns out that you knowingly had COVID, I would have. I think we'll be all right though. I think everyone looked very healthy.
Just, I mean, Sue's Corner, not everybody obviously may know the Museum of Comedy, but you should go. It's a lovely venue. But I'm intrigued by the cabaret seating. Was that actually in the main, they'd actually turned the main room into cabaret seating?
Yeah,
right.
Okay. Yeah, so there were little chairs around, tables, and then the back, they had 2 back rows. So they had 2 front rows of cabaret tables and then 2 back rows where people were either sat in pairs or alone. So yeah, it felt very bougie. I felt like I was in 1920s Berlin. I mean, that's based on one film.
Bowler hats are plenty.
Yeah,
that's right.
I've only got one reference for what, and it is called Cabaret. So
yeah. But it's the best reference to have.
Yeah. So it was fun, and also what's great about as a performer about the Museum of Comedy is one, it's got air conditioning. And 2, there's no mobile phone reception, and that means that no one is going to ever be distracted by their phone during your performance. Which
is perfect, and it keeps that 1930s Berlin authenticity right up there as well. Yeah,
and to be honest, and this is very selfish, I'm big on the rules when it comes to COVID. I don't want anyone ever taking risks, but I have performed to one audience where people actually sat a lot closer. They weren't really as distant as they were at the, because I think the Museum of Comedy, everyone was quite distanced apart. But I performed at one gig. I won't name it, but they said that the police regularly visited it, and people were sat much closer together, but they were all in masks, and it meant that if you couldn't really hear their laughter. And you weren't sure if you didn't hear much laughter, whether the joke didn't land, or if they were just sort of smiling politely. You just had no way to actually make sense of what was happening. So it felt a bit.
That's weird. That is slightly weird.
Yeah.
That is weird. And they weren't just checking it out because it just particularly appealed to cop humour.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I think I would have preferred the risk there, because it did feel very like I was, it felt like I was almost putting a play on for a group of parents when they're all in masks, Yeah,
totally, yeah. What about the sort of arc of your pandemic, if you like? So you're now at this sort of, we're now at this sort of tail end of it, where obviously since the 17th of May, there's been performances, albeit under slightly strange, slightly Weimar Republic sort of frisons, maybe. Yeah. But what about creatively over the sort of last however many months it is since March 2020, really?
So I actually initially really rejected doing Zoom gigs. I did a couple of game shows, but I was like, no, I don't want to. What's the point in doing a Zoom gig if you smash a Zoom gig? Like, you're basically just doing really well on a conference call. Skills won't translate. And then I started doing Zoom gigs, and I was like, actually, these are really fun, and it's making me engage with performance in a different way. And at that point, like, the pandemic was over, so I was like, I shouldn't be so stubborn. But I've spent a lot of time writing. I finished writing a screenplay that I started before the pandemic, and I also wrote a treatment and sort of pilot episode of a comedy thriller. And yeah, so I feel like I've done a lot creatively. Who knows?
That's pretty good. That's checked a few boxes.
Yeah, I think it's less something. It's something that I can't really brag on social media about quite being unless they get picked up. I mean, I've submitted the film screenplay into a few writing competitions, but it might be, it might be something that I will look back on and be like, this was the ramblings of someone who was in a pandemic mental dip. Someone should not have let me near a laptop. But I at one point I thought it was like genius, and then other points I'm like, no, these are just words. But yeah, I felt at least I achieved something by writing. But it would be better if I look at all my friends that focused on creating online content like sketches and videos and Instagram content and at first I was like, oh yeah, this is cool, and now I'm like, oh sheesh, I really should have but I don't have a niche, and you do have to have a USP with those sort of things, like, because you do see people. I mean, I saw myself just creating stupid videos just for my own entertainment more than anything else, but I look back at them and I'm like,
it's all consuming. To be honest, I think there are a lot of people who feel that way, even if they're not normally performers. I think they saw that opportunity open up, and thought, God, I really wouldn't mind a slice of that, really. And I think it's inspired. I think it will have inspired a whole new sort of generation of people that will be churning that out on a fairly semi-regular basis, really.
Yeah.
Did you relent on the Zoom gigs at all in the end?
Yeah, and I had fun with them. I did have fun with them. I didn't relent on TikTok though. That is one thing. Yes. I downloaded it. And then I just thought it's like there's just too many. There's just too many. Like, but the thing is that the main audience is 13 to 16 years old, and I don't want to.
Is that the actual figures?
It's like it's really young people, and I like. They've got no attention span. Like, why should we respect them and Grace put any effort into delivering stuff for them? I don't know. But
you did choose a tweet with a bit of a TikTok thing on there, didn't you?
I did, yes. I know. There's a little.
There's a moral in the story or something.
There's a back. I mean, that's the thing. I think there's probably some great stuff on TikTok, but that great stuff ends up on Twitter. So.
We did have a discussion. So when we were doing the show, so back when it's usually a 2-on-2 show, so it's myself and Sajila Kershi. Sajila's away at the moment, but and Alex Keeley and Anna Morris did it one week, and we talked about TikTok. TikTok came up, I can't remember, and I was actually surprised by sort of the antipathy. I mean, Alex is in his 20s, and he was not a TikTok fan, and I wasn't aware that even the demographic was lower than that, but I've only opened it a couple of times, and I said on that show it's a bit like the episode of Buffy when everyone loses their voice and she smashes the box at the end and all these voices just come out, and it's like, that is TikTok.
Or even worse, musical episode. Well, it's a great episode, but you wouldn't want to be a part of it, would you? The musical episode of Buffy where everyone's like, yeah, this is great, and like you suddenly realise that they've been controlled by a demon force.
Yes, that is another classic.
Trying to marry a teenager, but and I mean that is probably what TikTok. Also, it's the fact that it's so like anyone that criticizes the Chinese government has their videos removed. Seems like a big red flag for me, and it's like, what data are they harvesting through TikTok? Like
it was going to be it was actually going to be taken over by a Chinese company at one point, or has it been? I can never remember which way.
It is a Chinese company, I know, but I know that any time that there's been someone that's sort of like discussing the Myanmar sort of situation, sort of like all the human rights atrocities, not to bring the vibe down, but a lot of those videos have been lifted, and also ones of sort of a lot of other stuff that is like the censorship on there is very intriguing, and yeah,
Right.
I think I just think as well it's there's a lot of people. Yeah,
I feel like I'm not missing out, which is you're really helping me here. You're really doing me a favour.
Well, it's also I see a lot of people sharing videos from TikTok that are like, it's sort of like these sort of like, it's almost like new age repackaged it's not millennial, it's like Gen Z, new age philosophies. And I'm like, I don't think this is, you know, when someone's like, hey, just because like you've made plans with a friend, they're always American, or maybe they're not, they're always talking like, hey, just because you've made plans with a friend, it's been in the diary for ages, if you feel really bad about yourself, you can cancel on them. And I'm like, hang on, what about that friend? Like, it's all these sort of like weird affirmations, well, not necessarily weird affirmations, but selfish affirmations, these sort of things that is like all about sort of a lot of this sort of like, it's almost like mental health wellness kind of thing, but not necessarily from a very egocentric and very kind of like so navel gazing and thing. And I'm like, actually you do have to behave like the most selfish way you can often behave is putting yourself first. Like the least selfish thing you could do is being a collective. And a lot of times they'll be like, so you know, that I'll see people video and they'll be like, there'll often be sort of things that like have whispers of truth, but no real evidence backing it up. And it'll be sort of misinformation about history and things like that. And, oh, what you don't know about this. And I'm like, but do we know? Like everything that you're saying, like it is just a misinformation overload, or...
It's a lot of attitude. It's sort of attitude over facts quite often.
Yeah.
But the other stuff sounds very much like some kind of very selfish after school special or something like that.
Yeah.
God,
just
that's
full
horrific.
of just full of teenagers that I think can use very well can use language, the English language better than I can, basically, and make very good points, or make very articulated points that aren't necessarily good points, but they put them across in such a way that people are like, oh wow, like that's
but it's going to be a whole generation of people who literally can just have a point of view and something interesting to say for 60 seconds, and they're like, I'm out for the rest of the day, that's it now, that's me done.
Yeah exactly that.
Sometimes it's not so bad to be old. Well, this leads perfectly onto your life on social media. So we've ticked off TikTok. But
no TikTok for me.
What's the vibe for you when it comes to Facebook and Twitter? Obviously, I mean, Twitter's the focus of the show, but we have lots of guests that aren't necessarily Twitter fans. What's your sort of bag, as it were?
So I used to be Twitter's biggest. I used to love Twitter because I thought, people would be like, oh, it makes me feel really bad about themselves, and I'd be like, no, you're just following the wrong people. And then I realized this year that it's so addictive, and it's designed in a way that you can never stop scrolling. And it's also like every time something happens, I'm like, oh, what is my take on this? I need to have a take. And it's like, no, you don't have to always have a take. Like sometimes there is something and there is no right or wrong, or there isn't. And like you see people reacting, I'm like, and basically I used to think it was great because there's always that kind of like tweet where it'd be like, I joined Twitter to follow One Direction and now I'm a communist, like that kind of aspect, which I thought, that's hilarious. I was like, oh, it's all fine.
Well, there's only One Direction in communism, to be fair, but yes, I see your point.
Yeah.
It's very good.
Yeah, but it's that sort of thing where I was like, oh, when it's all fine when it's people that have like been poor. I mean, I'm not a communist, but like often there'll be people that have become more liberal or might have political views that have sort of become more in line with my thinking for using Twitter. But then I'm like, actually, there's also going to be people that are being sort of inducted into political thought that perhaps is terrible and they end up marching or storming the Capitol or doing like white lives matter protests and sort of thing, or and I think that Twitter is just as bad as radicalizing people as sort of like anything else. And this is getting really deep now, but I think it made me realize just how, and it's so designed to be sort of like you get that dopamine hit and you can't ever. And so basically I went cold turkey in January. I took I call it a mental dip. I call it a mental dip. And I know that it was a mental dip because I was this close to buying a robot dog. Like I was
that is the sign.
That's the bar, like when you're close, and I'll be clear, it wasn't like a 90s style robot dog. It's like a fluffy one that could, like, they give Alzheimer's patients for affection. I was like, yeah, this is, and the only thing that stopped me buying it was the fact that it didn't walk, because I like the idea of it following me around the flat and getting constant attention from it.
What did it do?
It just would like breathe. It just breathed on your lap and like would like look up at you. But yeah, and it was £150. And I was like, I didn't have £150 really, but I was willing to eat bread for a week. No, more than it'd be like a whole month. But no, I came to my senses. And actually, no, do you know what? I deleted Twitter, and then I did replace my Twitter. Like, okay, I went cold turkey, and I like the immediate after effects. So the week after, I was like really kind of like, oh my God, I need, like, it was like going cold turkey. Like I was like, I need that dopamine hit from stuff. And then like, oh, I want to know what's going on. I want like just, seeing funny stuff. Then the week after that, it was like I was Bradley Cooper in Limitless. Like I had suddenly had the attention span to read a book for the first time in like 10 years. I was like, wow, I could probably cure cancer right now. Like I was like, wow, I'm like intellectually capable of anything. And then I hadn't really pulled out of my mental dip, and I had been watching. Also, this is what I recommend if you are wanting a social media break, or what I really recommend is getting into Korean Netflix series. Okay. Because you have to read the subtitles, so you can't look at your phone while you're watching.
So anything subtitled, to be fair, but
no, because Korean. This is the thing. Korean TV series. They only ever have one series, but they're so addictive. And so I basically replaced my Twitter addiction with a Korean drama addiction. And the thing is, as well, with Korean dramas, is then they'll often be hyper violent, but
so's Twitter.
In a sort of, but also not in like a sort of like tense way, like not in like a like a gritty British drama way. So they're like the one that I got really really into was called Vincenzo, and it was about brilliant. It's about an Italian Korean that was adopted by an Italian couple and became a consigliere for the mafia, and then his mob boss gets killed, so he has to come back to Korea. And it's a comedy. It's a really surreal comedy, and like, but there will be one bit where like someone's thrown out of a building, and then the next scene there'll be like a sort of whole wordplay ridiculous bit about, or like a guy that's pretending to be. It's just a really ridiculous.
It's Twitter methadone, essentially, though, is what you're saying.
Yeah. That's exactly what happened. And then after that, I was like watching all this Korean drama, and I was like, I feel like I need, like, I keep hearing about BTS. Who are they? And then I YouTube BTS, and first I was like, oh yeah, these boys are talented. Then I was like, these are the most talented boys I've ever seen. And then by like the third minute of watching them, I was like, I would die for these boys. And I basically replaced my Twitter obsession with BTS, and I'm not into them as much anymore, but I'm dangerously obsessed with BTS.
I mean, look, they turned up on the Friends reunion special, so I'm all for them as far as I mean, they're as good in my book now.
Watch their videos, and you'll be like, wow, these are 7 angels that have been sent down.
I'm going to have to change this show. I'll end up having to change the show from a Twitter show to a sort of BTS or Korean drama show.
Yeah, let's worship BTS. That sounds.
So that's okay. That's interesting and highly clippable. Little bit of advice about Twitter there. That's very good.
Yeah.
So you've stood back. I mean, actually, one of the things you said there, and we'll get into the tweets in just a sec. But one of the things you said was about people's views being confirmed and always having to have a take. That was it. Always having to have a take on something, and I totally understand the urge to do that. But it gets to the point, I think, where you sort of get beaten relentlessly by so many news stories and so many,
and that's not,
you know, that you just think, you know what, I might stand aside from having a take on this. You know,
and I think as well that's not a healthy way to engage news. Do you think? Like, the fact is like you'll be scrolling on Twitter and there'll be someone being like, I just ate so many hamburgers that the Hamburglar has given me his cape, or something silly like that. And then the next one would be like 15 people killed with a train colliding in a school or something like that. And you're like, and then you'll go, the next one will be like a TikTok clip of someone dancing. You're like, I don't think this is how we're supposed to engage with information around the world, that like you suddenly go through something that's so fucking bleak and horrific, and then the next one will be like, hey, here's me and my grandma baking cookies. And I think Twitter, there should either be like happy Twitter and evil Twitter, where it's like whether you want to like which one you flip between two.
I mean that's really so. I mean, years I know before social media, I don't think anyone says this now. Maybe they do, but they always say something like, you know, when somebody in the world is dying, someone's being born. When somebody's having a birthday, somebody's, you know, attending a funeral, and all the rest of it. So the gist of it was there are totally diametrically opposed things happening all the time in the world. The trouble is Twitter is that it is just a live feed of all of those things. And much as I hate to sort of always continually borrow from Buffy, there is a scene with Eva Willow in one of the shows where she's sort of bent double and she's sort of saying, oh, you know, I just feel all the pain of the world coursing through me. And it's like, yeah, that's Twitter. That is
that is
Twitter moment.
Yeah, imagine if Dark Willow had Twitter, she might have just destroyed all social media rather than tried to destroy the world, you know.
Well, she was my Twitter picture at one point, actually. In fact, that does make me think that you should have bought that dog and actually set up a Twitter account for the dog. And then you could have solved two things in one. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just an idea. Right.
I think people might have been like, I might have got messages from my parents being like, Maddie, people have reached out to us saying that you've set up a Twitter account for a robot dog. Are you okay? Like,
oh no, totally anonymous troll. You could have had a way of time. Totally.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, that is. I love the sort of conversations beforehand because they act as a sort of a massive sort of health warning. But the tweets that we've chosen are they're pretty benign. Well, not benign. They're great, but they're not.
They're my favourite kind of tweets.
So now where do we start? I mean, I feel like, actually, you know, I'll do the football ones last, otherwise we're just never going to get through these. Now, I feel that, I'm not being cruel, but I'm going to start with the TikTok one.
I know, it's just such a fun little video. And also, I also like that it's relatable that someone says that, like, because there are so many videos with Italians getting really annoyed at someone cooking food, like, you know, like a video of a Italian eating, like being served pizza that has like broccoli on it or something, and they're always funny. And then this one, I mean, it's just the heart and emotion, and it's proof that there is good TikTok content out there, but it's also proof that you'll see it on Twitter rather than having to download TikTok.
So the original tweet is from, well, not the original, but the quote tweet from Clinically Lux. Italian people getting upset about people bastardising Italian food is literally my favourite content on the internet. And she's quote tweeted Noureddin, who's I actually don't know how Bearded Genius pronounces that name, which is given his number of Twitter followers, it's terribly ignorant of me, and I apologise. But let's watch the clip. And this obviously this is a TikTok clip, is it not?
Understand me? No, you can't cut to the bus.
Is this enough for both of us? Is this enough for both of us?
No, a little bit more.
Okay, I'll wait.
Che cazzo? Sara, ma tu sei pazza!
What?
Sara, tu...
What?
Is enough? I have to eat this shit pasta so short.
What do you mean?
This is not spaghetti, my love, come on.
It doesn't fit in the
You can't
pan.
understand me. No, you can't cut the pasta so...
But it just didn't fit in the pan.
I don't... go in the pan, my love. You cut the pasta. You know that is illegal in Italy.
Is this enough for both of us?
So I'm going to ask you about. So where's the cat? Who's filming that? And is it? I mean, is it? Have they basically decided? Look, we've had this argument before. Let's do it. Let's replay it quite well acted and do it for TikTok.
I think he's being so genuine because the way he storms over, I think he would have to be a very, very good actor. And also you can see his sort of like his initial reaction, like, and so I think she knows it's an easy way of getting it right. I think she's put her phone there, recorded it, and think this is how I'm going to get a rise out of my partner. Let's see how it goes. I mean, she's lucky that he definitely loves her in that he's like, he keeps being like, my love, what are you doing?
Although there is that line, go in the pan, my love. And I was thinking, is this Silence of the Lambs territory? I don't know what's going on.
But also, I'm always snapping spaghetti. There's any time.
Well, even when you're not cooking it, is it just a thing?
Yeah, just throw it and just throw it at people.
Like
but it is like I don't trust that it'll all cook. You know, if I don't.
I can see the total fairness of that. Yeah.
But now I see his reaction. It's going to make me feel twice.
It's going to make you think twice.
It's going to think twice about snapping pasta. Also, I like that he calls it pasta and not noodles because it really bugs me when I don't know if you've ever eaten in America.
Yes, but like, not pasta. I don't think. I don't know.
If someone says, "Oh, would you like some chicken noodle soup?" You'll think that noodles are like ramen noodles.
But it's just spaghetti.
It's spaghetti, and you're like, no, that is not what a noodle is.
I don't think I've had spaghetti as a pasta for quite a while. Actually, it's sort of more like stuffed tortellini and God knows what else.
You need to. Well, there's this person here is making a great case to put it all in the pan. I
mean, I wonder what it does if you cut it in half, as opposed to if there's half the amount of water in it. It shouldn't really matter, should it? It's got a tiny amount of water. I need to look. If there's anyone watching that knows what actually happens, let's just check. We've not had any comments in. Then let us know because I'm intrigued to know what the big deal is there. So actually, your first, it's ended up being the first tweet at the top. Very interesting because it goes back to what you were saying about the mixed messaging of what it's like to be performing in the semi-normal world.
Yeah,
sort of.
That's my entire feeling. Like, I really want to go out and enjoy the world, but I'm kind of like, this Delta variant. Everyone doesn't look good for us. But at the same time, if people invite me out, I'll find it very hard not to.
Where are you on your vaccine journey? Because I mean, they're opening up football stadiums now, and God knows what else.
Yeah, I know, and I live really close to Arsenal Stadium, but I had to go all the way to Angel.
All the way to Angel.
All the way to Angel. I know. Can you believe it? But no, I have had my first dose. I got Moderna.
Oh right. Okay. Yeah.
And from what I understand, I should now be about 80%.
Really? For just the first one? That's impressive.
Yeah, and then I think the second dose gives you 90%. So it's only extra 10%.
Okay. Well, just for the listeners, because obviously we'll do this as a podcast as well. So it's Katie Kelleher's tweet. She's just put summer 2021, and she's quote tweeted emoji mashup bot with the partying emoji plus the worried face to do a nice kind of mix up face, partying but feeling slightly looking over your shoulder, essentially, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
But do you know what protection you get with the Delta variant then? From the Moderna?
I think it looks like all the science in this country has only been exploring the Pfizer and the AstraZeneca. And I think it seems like there's been so many people that have been getting the coronavirus with the Delta variant, despite having one or two vaccines, that the coverage isn't great. But it seems like people have been getting it, but they're not being hospitalised with it. That's what I understand.
Yeah,
so it's like, it's not as bad. But I'm still like, I don't want it, If you want me to really bring the vibe down, like they've already found that people that have contracted coronavirus are more likely to have strokes. And That's
Right.
I don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So I want to avoid it at all costs, basically.
Okay. Yeah.
But not enough to stop having fun with people, you know.
Yeah. Tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I'm just sort of sitting here thinking I had AstraZeneca, and we just made to feel like AstraZeneca was like, oh well, we bought it now, so we might as well use it. It's like brilliant.
It's like whoever's doing the PR on AstraZeneca, they are doing the best job, because like at no point is like they've managed to like. There's been a bit of news that is negative press for AstraZeneca, but people are still like, yeah, I'm gonna go get the AstraZeneca.
Yeah.
Like they've managed to do a good spin on it.
Yeah, well, no, absolutely. I mean, I have now had both doses, and I'm glad to have got it all done. Really, yeah. It's just nice to get. It's just something about Moderna. Just sounds you can just indicate that you're younger, and there's just something shiny. There's just something shiny and happy about Moderna.
Well, it is the Dolly Parton vaccine.
Ah, yeah, it's the one she funded.
Yeah, so.
Oh, gosh, it's even got sort of Glastonbury hero kudos. Oh, never mind. Moving on. I like this one. This is great. We're really on the social media mores today.
Yeah.
Do you want to read this one out and then go into it?
This is a smile ! Your post as somebody's cringe artifact to share with the shit-talking group text, which is very Cassie and depressing, but it probably is true that like I know that there are, you know, like there are people whose posts everyone screenshots and sends and be like, oh gosh, have you seen this? And you know, there's probably been tweets and posts that I've done that people have been like shared with someone else, but
does that not make you feel quite sort of I don't know, is there something kind of good? What's that Oscar Wilde quote? The worst thing about being talked. The worst thing.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what I'm saying.
The worst thing is worse being not talked about than being talked about.
Yes.
Is that
essentially
like
the gist of it? Yes.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, sometimes it depends what you're posting. Like if it's because you know, like I remember someone, you know, like right, for example, the Kevin Smith, the guy that the filmmaker behind Mallrats and everything.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and he had that tweet that sort of said that like basically it's just like about how much he loves having sex with his wife, but it was quite like graphic, and like it was a sort of thing that like I bet everyone in Hollywood who sort of knew him or even sort of just vaguely knew him, I bet everyone had screenshot that and sent that round a lot of group texts. Like that's the sort of thing that I think if you're tweeting something, but you know what, he owned it and he retweets it, but
are there any aubergine emojis involved or not?
I think there was descriptive things about her vagina and his I can't remember it, but I just remember when I read it I was like, oh my god, like, and his daughter is like his daughter has been in a couple of his films, and so she must be on social media and she must follow him, and you just think, oh babe, like my dad's done some embarrassing things, but at least he's never tweeted. But I mean, she must be. Yeah,
I think there must be sort of a different, kind of parent sort of offspring vibe in a very active social media household.
Yeah. And they must also like, I think they're probably like, oh, we're not like other parents, we're cool parents, like probably. But I think anytime I see someone tweet about, or sometimes like I've got friends that might like I know people who aren't in comedy and stuff that will reply to like porn stars and glamour models on Twitter with like, oh, you're looking great today, babe. And it's kind of like, oh man, if that was a comedian that, I mean, there might be, you know, if that was someone.
Right, someone with a following, they'd probably get quite a lot of traction from it.
Yeah. And
I've noticed that when us lesser mortals try things that are on a similar sort of a similar vein, it's just like, you know, you sit there warming your hands on your one retweet. But totally.
Yeah.
I kind of like this tweet because it just sort of feel like the idea that I quite like the idea of being some sort of strewn around somebody's WhatsApp group for like a crazy tweet in some ways. But it's sort of interesting that if a tweet is viral enough, then obviously most people are going to see it on Twitter. But there will be people who probably will get it from sort of WhatsApp first.
Yeah, and I think if it's a tweet that doesn't really, if it's a tweet that only gets like 2 likes.
Yeah, but it's still really embarrassing.
And it's really embarrassing. But I mean, I think I'd like to think I'm self-aware enough not to tweet anything on Kevin Smith's level of wife.
Yeah. Clearly,
wife love.
Well, I guess it's good to know that he tweets for himself and he doesn't have a social media team. Although from what I've seen of social media teams behind Twitter, I mean, they would probably do it anyway, to be honest. They'd probably be doing a definition of a good job, I think. Oh dear. Right, so, well, speaking of difficult stories, I think that actually, that brings us quite nicely onto Alistair Green's tweet about Gove and Vine. This is I'll share my sort of thoughts on the story after. But if you want to just read the tweet and then go into it, basically.
Been crying my eyes out all night. If Michael Gove and Zara Vine can't make it work, what chance do the rest of us have? Broken heart emoji.
I think that's quite a good. It's a good take on it because it's a difficult story. I don't, in the sense of, they're not exactly. Mail on Sunday journalists are not everyone's cup of tea or favourites. Obviously, she wrote this incredible article not this Sunday, obviously, but last Sunday, about in the wake of the Hancock scandal, and basically just it was clear that something was going on between her and Michael Gove, and it was just like it was the kind of Lady Macbeth.
Because I felt like he after the Hancock thing, he was. I felt like he did an interview or something, or he commented to suggest that, like, oh yeah, well, my marriage is fine, like, or something like that. Or there was something to sort of suggest that he was trying to give the impression that his. But it makes you wonder what's going on behind the scenes, whether they're trying to get ahead of any newspaper. I mean, I don't think there's any chance.
Well, there've been a couple of tweets about stories to come out about Michael Gove. I mean, from my point of view, from this account, for example, when the whole Hancock thing happened, there was such a kind of, obviously there were people in the fallout that should have been totally protected by this, but when it came to Twitter and the response to it and the comedic response to it, it was such a kind of slightly knockabout, bawdy story that inevitably there was and we did a lot of tweets on it from this account, and we retweeted quite a few other things as well. But I find with this one, obviously it's divorce. I think this is a nice take on a difficult subject. It's divorce. Yeah. We don't know what's behind it yet. It may be something,
and it's just, it's just also the ridiculousness of being invested in their relationship is just, to me, it's hilarious. Like, sort of, because it is a sort of thing that, like if, I remember when like Jay-Z cheated on Beyonce, people were like, what hope do the rest of us have? Yeah. And, getting very emotionally involved. I just like the idea of people, the idea of someone being that,
using them as a marker for romance, basically.
Yeah,
they were married in 2000, I think, so there's 21 years. So there is actually, there's almost a kind of, there's obviously a comedic point there, but there is actually, it's based on something as well. It wasn't like they were, they had a long enough marriage for people to make that joke and for to resonate even more. I mean, there have been a couple of, I've seen a few sort of tweets on this from the other side of the political spectrum, which I don't think particularly honour the people tweeting them, really. I mean, it's, but that's Twitter for you. That's the way it is, But I think this take on it was very skillful and adroit, as they say. So now where should we go next? Well, actually, we could just do this in order, couldn't we? Because I've been puzzling a bit over this one. What's going on in Mr. Chow's tweet?
So this is a thing that this tweet made me laugh because I was like, I thought it was Men in Black, but I was like, what are they actually paying homage to? Because like, is it Pulp Fiction, or is it like, what is it? What is like? But I remember watching Space Jam, and there being like lots of really niche. Also, I mean, Space Jam was very much like the ultimate 90s movie. Now probably hasn't aged too well in that the soundtrack was by R. Kelly, and there's probably other things. There were like, but I remember as well, not really understanding the weight of the opening. Do you remember?
I've held my hands up and sort of plead complete ignorance, but I assume that if it's from the 1990s, it's definitely been cancelled. I mean, you could just take it as read.
I mean, I remember thinking it was a movie that like I remember enjoying, but then I remember rewatching it, and I knew about Michael Jordan's dad's death as when I rewatched it, and I did not realise as a British 90s child completely ignorant to the tragedy that had befallen Michael Jordan, how devastating the opening of that film is. And I was like, wow, it really is. And then it just completely moves on, and it's like Aliens. So Aliens and Looney Tunes. It was, the ultimate 90s film.
I think I might have to watch it
and
now.
Then, yeah, but it's like this tweet. It's just like, what were they? Like, it's like, so for anyone listening, it's like a picture of, I don't know who half the Looney Tunes are, to be honest. I think that's
Yosemite. So it's Mr. Chow's tweet, and it says, still remember seeing this as a kid and thinking they were riffing on Men in Black. And then the picture is, you think it's Yosemite Sam dressed in either like Samuel L. Jackson and John Travolta were in Pulp Fiction, or it could be Men in Black. I mean, they're suits essentially.
Yeah.
And then the character, I think it's Elmer Fudd. So it's quite an interesting. It's a funny pairing for like a Looney Tunes sort of juxtaposition, and then they've got these sort of massive revolvers. I mean, someone said underneath, same, supposed to be Pulp Fiction. I assume it is.
Yeah.
And but isn't the Men in Black poster? Don't they have their guns out prominently?
They also don't have guns. They don't have guns that big.
No, they don't.
They've got. They have the
space.
Dude, I love. I'm a big fan of Men in Black. It is a great film. But yeah, it's. But I there's so much stuff that you watch as a kid, or I watched as a kid, and rather just wonder what are they referencing. I was just like, well, that's a really intriguing.
I mean, Yosemite Sam and Elmer Fudd go back to the 40s or something. I mean, they've been constantly replayed on, obviously on telly with Bugs Bunny. And they're both Bugs Bunny characters, as sort of the link. But, yeah.
But I think as well, like, it's interesting when you watch stuff like the Pink Panther or Bugs Bunny or anything when you're a bit older, and you realise and you've got more cultural references, and you watch them, you're like, oh, that's actually referencing the Vietnam War or something like, and you understand it a bit more. But when you're a kid, you're just like, oh, that's a random weird little segue into nothing. And it's just, that's what the nature of a cartoon. It's just all very chaotic.
Yeah, I can't remember. There was a time in my life, and I can't remember what it was, where I literally just basically said, I'm into box sets now, that's all I do. And I sort of kind of reneged on film. I think I should have had this discussion with Richard Sandling last week as well, and just shocked him about how. But I sort of lost my film. I grew up in the sort of John Hughes era of teen movies, which were just like everything, really, just everything. And then it's all been about sort of the box sets in later life. But I'm now intrigued. I'm officially intrigued, so I'll be digging it out.
I mean, I don't think it will hold up to quite the movie. There's so many 90s. The only films that I think, movies from my childhood that I'm like, yes, still great. Small Soldiers, Jumanji, Mrs. Doubtfire, and Matilda. Yeah, those ones.
A heavy Robin Williams element there, but.
And Mara Wilson. I mean, she was the childhood staple, and Kirsten Dunst as well. Yeah. I
think it's here's the Men in Black. Thank you, Martin, one of our avid viewers. Well, yeah, they're pretty big guns, to be fair. So
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm definitely I would definitely go with. I'm going to go with not Men in Black. What are we going with? We're going with Pulp Fiction, aren't we?
Yeah, I suppose they probably put it in there for the grown-ups, being like, yeah, this is a cheeky little wink.
That's what we like, guys. We like that instant feedback. Right, so I'm going to get on my soapbox a little bit. There are about a billion things here. All the tweets that were in the offing are under our likes tab. But what am I going to do first? I think
there's a lot of the sea on fire. That is a
I mean, that's an interesting. Well, let's do. I've got to bang the drum for Gap. It's another.
Oh yes, a big.
So I think I tell you, this is not a good look for me. But in a year or a year and a half of things which have been so relentlessly miserable, and actually I think things have been pretty terrible on the planet since about 2015. I think, but this year's obviously been a pandemic year, really really difficult year. I think the thing that really broke me was finding out that Gap were going to close all of their stores. And yes, I know they're going online, but I don't get this online thing. I mean, I know ASOS have been doing it for ages, but ASOS sounds like a government department selling you clothes. It's just wrong. It just doesn't make any sense. So what night did this break? I can't remember. It's like Thursday night, Wednesday night or something, I think it broke. That Gap were. I mean, they were looking like they were shutting a number of their stores, and then they announced that they were shutting all of their certainly their European stores and going online. And so let's get into it together. But before we do that, the selection of tweets. I love these tweets; they're all fantastic. So from Dems, how can Gap be closing their stores before I have a child? Fantastic. Bill Linan. Sorry if I got the pronunciation wrong. Gutted, to be honest. Love the blandness of their clothes. Great for people like me who just want to be comfortable as they wait for death. I mean, that's everything I wanted from the Gap, to be fair. I mean, was there another one? I know they were sort of probably the best two, actually. There was another guy as well. Let's see if I can retrieve it from our main. Actually, this is quite a beautiful tweet. See if I can retrieve it from our main list. It will require some scrolling. It's a lovely advertising ad company story. There's some great tweets on here, but I could get very easily distracted. Let's have a look. This is where it goes slightly less. Look at that Haribo. It's slightly less slick at this point, where we have to find the rogue tweet that I didn't like. Bill Dems. There we go. John Wilshire. News of Gap closing all their stores jolts back a memory from the noughties when the agency I was at were pitching for the Gap account, and so bought all the pitch team Gap clothes and did a fashion shoot so that actually I'm not sure why agency's gonna agency, and it's like what you're selling. It's like selling coals to Newcastle, I think is the phrase there. I don't quite know what that was about, but I've got to say I was mortified. It's sort of historically a big chunk. I like to go to a shop where I can buy plain clothes, like the t-shirt I'm wearing, a blue Gap t-shirt, and I just like good quality plain colours, and Gap was perfect for that.
It's I'm just going to put this lamp on. It's what I think is interesting. I knew that Gap was on quite far. I knew about 10, 15 years ago, because I grew up in Canterbury, and Gap couldn't afford to keep their store open in Canterbury, and Canterbury is the most Gap heavy, Gap centric crowd. I think the landlord of the property that they rented was the cathedral, and the cathedral just like
it was certainly a cathedral to me when I went in there. That is writing on the wall stuff, isn't it? Yeah.
And but one of my childhood memories is going into Gap when I was like 12, so a bit old enough to like do some shopping and dressing. And the changing rooms in the Gap in Canterbury had they were like blinds.
Yeah.
So you could sort of like
the saloon door ones.
Saloon doors, but they're face. And I was like, why do they face down? Like
slatting. Yeah.
Because like anyone, they should. It's just such an odd thing, because like little kids would like look up at you getting dressed, and I mean, I thought, why do they face down? Because little kids, and now I'm an adult and I've just said that out loud. I was like, oh, would they face the other way? creepy people would just, as creepy adults could just look down in them.
And it wasn't as if they were adjustable.
No, they weren't adjustable. It's just like,
no, that's right. That is, I totally remember that. Do you think this is a part in their downfall there?
Probably. It might be, is that what they're called? Louvres?
Louvres, yes. He's on fire tonight, Martin.
I would wonder whether it was a deterrent for thieves, that you felt like you're being watched, or maybe it was a selling point. Like some people like to dress like they're a small infant could. No, that sounds much more menacing than actually.
But it's the saloon doors. I don't know if there's. Actually, a lot of their kids' clothes were quite checkered and count. As much as I love the plain range, if you didn't get anything in their plain colour range, they would obviously go to the total extreme, and a lot of their clothes you wouldn't have looked out of place at a hoedown in. You know, I mean, there's an episode in Friends where there's someone dressed for Halloween in a sort of kind of Gap cowboy costume, essentially. But so there was quite a lot of that going on. But yeah, they
never really changed. They just sort of sold the same thing since they opened, I imagine. That. Like, I mean, it's good. Also, I remember actually seeing a tweet where someone on Boxing Day said that someone had managed to return a Gap shirt with a label in it, but it hadn't been sold since like 1998. I remember seeing that one year, and it really made me laugh. The fact is that someone could return a shirt, a plaid shirt to Gap, and it didn't. No one noticing that it was that, like, until the manager ran it through the system, worked out, it's actually from 1998.
You just don't get that online, kids. Do you know what I mean?
No,
you just don't get it. Oh God. Well, I mean, I went past the Gap, one of the Gap stores nearest me. I didn't even know it existed until sort of the pandemic. It was one of the places that I would go to. When it opened, it was such a novelty to be able to sort of buy clothes at one stage in the pandemic, you know. And, I just went in today to sort of literally just say, I'm so sorry. I mean, it's online. It still exists. But it's a sad loss.
But Gap sizes are so, like, the amount of times I've gone into Gap and picked up, well, actually, it's not that many, but any time that I've gone to Gap and I'm like, I'm going to try this on, I'll try it on in one item in one size, and it'll be huge, and another item in another size, and be tight. Like, Gap is a kind of shop that does not have consistent sizing. You do need to have the physical.
Yeah. Well, exactly. I mean, no. I mean, why I oughta. So anyway, moving on from that range. So I don't want to run over too much, but let's just. I mean, obviously there are about a squizbillion tweets about the football. Really, so I don't even know. I love the fact that Matvienko was trending because of the Ukrainian player Matvienko. Again, something else that will really age me is a love of Matvienko, and I know a lot of people are checking out their albums, and it's great, happy bossa nova-y stuff. But I'll just whiz through a couple. I mean, I think some of these definitely deserve an honourable mention. Alex Keeley, who we've had on the show, this was about half time, I think. Sad that Ukraine, the country of Gogol, cannot go goal in this football match. And he got obviously quite a lot of stick for this terrible pun, but and also I think he might have had to go into hiding had the Ukraine actually won.
Yeah.
But, you know, did you have you been at all impacted by Euro 2020/21?
Do you know what? Because my flatmates haven't been into it. I know that I would really get into the football if I did. But my flatmates haven't been watching it, and I'm like, I'm not going to watch it on my own. So I haven't actually. But do you know what? I'm probably going to watch the semi-final and get really into it, and then get really like pissed off when England lose, as if like I've spent my whole life waiting for this moment.
What do you mean lose? What are you talking about?
I mean, to be honest, I can imagine England winning the Euros, and it's like that's not really as impressive as winning. Not winning, but I could imagine they could get to the finals of the Euros, and then just being like, but it's only the Euros, isn't it? It's not the World Cup. I don't know whether I should say that out loud.
I mean, It's Coming Home was penned for the 1996 Euros. It was actually given birth.
Oh, really? I thought it was a World Cup.
No, I'm people will shoot me down if I'm wrong. David Baddiel, get in touch. We want you on the show. Well, and Frank, obviously. But yeah, I'm pretty sure, Euro 96. And then it's a classic shot of the two of them standing after the Germany game. Sort of obviously disconsolate after losing on penalties. Obviously that's the Gareth Southgate miss. So this whole thing, it does feel about sort of heavy warning of like not predicting a victory, but there are elements. It's really interesting. So both the semi-finals are at Wembley and the finals at Wembley, having all the games having been strewn as far as Azerbaijan.
I know, it's absolutely
what. They haven't conceded a goal, but that's the more you advance, the more pressure there is, and people are really conscious of any bad omens. So actually, of the 3 tweets showing in this window, so Al Barry's tweet appealing to ITV to do the decent thing and hand Wednesday's game over to the BBC, as otherwise they'll be entirely responsible for us to getting knocked out in the semis again. Because I think it was Italia 90, 30 years of hurt, of course, 1966. It's like having a right-hand man with Martin. So there you go. There's proof of that. But so that's the kind of, I think it was 1990 when it was the ITV commentary, and the late Brian Moore, the fantastic late great, I loved him, Brian Moore, with Kevin Keegan, and he asked Kevin Keegan whether David Batty was going to score the penalty, and it was the way it was sort of worded. It just seemed to foreshadow this sort of terrible event. So there's obviously a lot of superstition around it, so I don't really want to fall foul of being too confident that it might be an England-Italy final. That's where I put my betting money.
I feel like I would think that Britain could make the final if nothing else, because all the other teams are like, London's got too much of the Delta variant. Let's not risk it. But no, I do think that. Also, I think that there's something to be said that like when you are playing matches on home turf, you generally do better, don't you?
Certainly France 98. It didn't quite happen for Portugal in previous Euros. If that's correct. And then, but yeah, you're right. I think it does give a boost. And there's a lovely tweets. And I've got to say that in terms of it's coming home, there are so many people who want to sort of make jokes now about this sort of staple that's gone into the vernacular. But Ivo Graham, again during last night's game or after last night's game, basically, it's coming home, it's coming home, it's coming home, it's there. The perfect gorilla / Sean Ryder moment. So that's my favourite so far, I think.
It's a good tweet.
Did you want to pick up on? You mentioned that before we go. Did you want to do the crazy Eye of Sauron as it's being?
Oh yeah.
labelled?
So
here we go.
Yeah, the Gulf of Mexico. The sea is on fire.
Yeah.
I studied abroad in Mississippi, and I went to the coast Biloxi with a friend, and this was 10 years ago, and there was still oil from the oil spill that I think had happened like 3 years before that on the coast. Yeah. And there were still houses that were flat from Hurricane Katrina, and this was like the richest part of Mississippi. And so I don't know whether there's like what's going to happen to Biloxi with this fire, but yeah, that's a bleak moment. But it is absolutely like what is that? Yeah.
Well, I mean, the 2 tweets. I mean, there's tons of tweets. So Matthew, I mean, usually I didn't put Matt Heighton's in. I don't know why, but it was basically, I think it was the Eye of Sauron joke that he did, and then so Cad March, Gareth's account is basically got the spill or the pipeline rupture as my hangover, and then the boat sort of trying to sort of put it out, uncontrollable crying, toast, and ibuprofen. And actually, there is a real resonance of the situation is a teeny bit like the Evergreen in the sense that there's this huge, massive thing going on, and then these tiny little things like the crane trying to actually extricate the problem. So there's a real sense of sort of hopelessness, really.
And also, it's like how can why is the sea why is it still if anything should be not be able to burn that long? It should be.
It's the saturation, isn't it? I see. It's the saturation, And I did really like. I mean, it's not the comedy; it's the anti-meme oration. It says Karina basically saying, did I do this right? So obviously using the same picture. But she's got the we're now going to have to keep calling it the Eye of Sauron, but it's got the fire as climate disaster as a result of unfettered capitalism, and then around it recycling, turning off your AC, your air conditioning, and no plastic straws. And I did find that sort of quite resonant, because when you sometimes you feel you've got to make these contributions, but sometimes they feel quite piddly, especially when you know where some of the recycling ends up, you know.
Yeah. Now there's that. I mean, I saw on Twitter this week that like recycling's ending up being put in Turkey, just being burnt in Turkey, and I was like, mate, I wash all my
I know, using all that water.
Yeah, I'm really rigorous with my recycling, but yeah, it's like I think I have to be like my grandma. She's like, the only way that you can be mentally okay in this world is by just being apathetic to all but one issue and like just focus on that. And I think for my mental well-being, it cannot be the sea on fire, because I have no way of knowing how to navigate that.
Yeah, I mean, look, you know, I think climate change is what's going to steer policy, whether we like it or not. It's going to be what steers policy in the sort of decades to come. I mean, the split on this was very well illustrated by the front page, I think, of the Observer and the Friday Times and the Friday Guardian, which was basically, you know, people facing petrol rises in petrol, or versus the sort of climate catastrophe. And I know there's a trade-off. You can't just reset everybody's lives to zero. Yeah. Of course, it's difficult. I understand that, but it is the defining issue, I think.
What I thought was very fascinating is that when when the sea set on fire, the Eye of Sauron appeared, suddenly I saw promoter tweets from Glencore, you know, the people, and they were like, we've been harvesting all these minerals that are more sustainable than for batteries or something. And I was like, is their PR team or marketing team suddenly like, shit, we can sell this. This is great. Promote. But of course, Glencore have got very bad history of using like child labour and stuff to do their mining. So
yeah, I mean, there was a weird thing this week about, I think it was BBC Bite Size doing a.
Doing the pros and cons of global warming.
I mean, I suppose if you can suggest these things with scientific basis, but they have to come with I assume they came with a fairly heavy disclaimer, but the pros and cons are each other's disclaimers, but I
can understand if they did it like the reasons people don't believe in climate change. That's like something that we studied in school, like why some people don't believe in climate change. But to actually be like, oh, there are some advantages to people in the like mass death. Yeah,
no, totally. Well, anyway, listen. So before you sort of, I love you're very poetically kind of. It's like the kind of the setting sun in terms of. Your,
I know. I feel really awkward.
It's good. It's fine. But what are you up to basically? Plug away.
So I'm actually emceeing a gig tomorrow. It's a beautiful lineup. It's at Aces and Eights in Tufnell Park.
Oh, cool.
A brilliant lineup. It is called Bad Bitches Comedy. It's not my night, but there's always a good lineup, and I'm emceeing it tomorrow. I've also got. I am on Twitter and I am on Instagram at Diary of a Maddie.
Yes.
And I've spelled
You're Diary of a Maddie everywhere, aren't you?
Yeah, and it's not what I'd choose my username to be, but here we are. But it's
consistent over all sort of media.
Yeah.
I think it's quite good. Yeah, there you are on the screen now.
And what else have I got to promote? There probably is something else. Let me just double check my diary.
Will do.
This is how professional I am.
That's fine. You check, Joe. I'll just flag up Martin here. I had 2 draft tweets ready for an England defeat, which I sadly couldn't use. Roman Horror Day and why does it always Ukraine on me? Well, there we go. Fortunately, we didn't have to use those, but they are very good.
Do you know what?
Go on.
I can't find out the other stuff right now. But you know what? I list my stuff on my website, and
Exactly.
Maybe I'll just promote BTS, you know, or Korean dramas.
Yes, no, fair enough. And we'll definitely tweet out stuff as well. So I'll do the sort of closing with our little sort of plugs as well. Hang back and we'll have a chat in the green room. Basically, obviously, please do follow Maddie at Diary of a Maddie and follow us at LKT Zoom. If you want to support the show, you can. You can go to the Buy Me a Coffee website and find the Let's Kill Twitter section and make donations there. That should be easy to do, but in a very high-tech way. I'll just lean out of the way to show you. There you go. Buymeacoffee.com # Let's Kill Twitter. That would be fantastic. So yes, next week is the final of the Euros. So I've decided that we're actually going to have the first break that we've had in a long time. That's not to presuppose the aforementioned Italy-England final that it might be, if you're a betting man. It's basically, there's going to be a lot of interest, obviously, in whoever's in the Euros. So I think it's probably good to give that. And I think it's Wimbledon finals day for the men as well. Is it Sunday? Yes. So there's a lot going on next Sunday, in fairness. So we will skip a week and we will let you know who is next, which will be Sunday, July the 18th, no less. So, yeah, I mean, that's it, really. It's been amazing. It's been packed with goodies, I have to say. So thanks very much, Maddie. And we shall catch up after the show. I was just a wave goodbye to the streamers. Thanks. I know there were people joining us from Eventbrite, the Eventbrite link as well, which is brilliant. So however you joined, thanks very much for watching. See you later.